Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo, founder with Asheville Real Estate News. Really excited about the episode that we're bringing you guys today. Talking a little bit about what it really means to build out a team and what the process and maybe some of the ups and the downs of getting into real estate full-time and, being full-time rehabber here in the Asheville market is like. So we got a really good opportunity to hear that story, dig into some questions. Personally, I'm excited because our guest, we've talked a lot. We've done some things together. We've never really sat down and chatted beforehand. So this is going to kind of be my opportunity as well to connect with somebody here in the industry. Before I really introduce our guest, as always, want to give a big shout out, big thank you to American IRA LLC, your local IRA custodian here who sponsored the podcast. So as always, thank you to them. Also, we are recording this, I guess today's October 30th. Last night, the 29th, we just had our new meetup, or our last meetup under our new format, I should say. And that was really fun. Conversation with people, a lot of Q&A with Jim Hitt, who's the owner of American IRA. And we got into creative financing, leveraging the IRA, and house hacking. So stay tuned. We're going to be bringing you guys another meetup with a new guest here in the next couple of months. So just keep an ear out for that announcement. But yeah, without further ado, I just realized this is actually really fitting to introduce our guest today because it's almost Halloween and your acronym is CREEP, right? Or I'm not sure if that's the way you pronounce it, but this is so Alan Windham, welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Hey, thanks, good. Thanks for having me, Rodrigo. We abbreviate it to CREP.
CREP? Oh, okay.
For Carolina Real Estate Pros.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's us.
Okay, so too much forcing with the Halloween then. Fair enough. So, yeah, man, like I mentioned in the intro, I think you've been doing this almost about the same amount of time I have. 2012, 2013 was when I got into it. When did you start?
A little later, we started the kind of research into investing about 2016.
Okay.
Officially started doing deals in 2017.
Yeah. And we kind of had a little bit of an overlap there at the beginning for all the wrong reasons. Not anything that it was just part of it, but I think I was kind of thinking about this conversation a little bit. I was like, there's a lot of ups and downs that can happen, and as much as a great business and investment real estate can be, it's definitely not necessarily smooth sailing per se. Yep. Do you mind just kind of giving us some background on like what's happened since 2016 to today, what you've done, what you haven't done, and kind of what you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess about 2015, started looking around like, hey, I know there's more to working in corporate America than what I was doing day in, day out. Like many folks, Rich Dad, Poor Dad pulled me into the real estate arena. It's ultimately that motivated me to get started in this one. So I got my real estate license in 2016, did a few deals while I was working full-time. And then in 2017, I stepped out of full-time corporate world into this world of real estate investing, which is kind of insane, but at the end of the day, my wife allowed me to be able to kind of start this venture because she was working at the time. Okay. From a financial standpoint, allowed us to stay afloat. And so in 2017, we bought 3 houses to renovate and flip. We only ended up finishing one of those 3 out in 2017. The other 2 were finished out in 2018. One of those was a complete disaster, actually, that, for hindsight being 2020, was a great opportunity to learn and be refined by it. But in the midst of it was an absolute horror story. We ended up calling it our Indian burial ground, just because what could go wrong went wrong.
Oh, I was like, oh my goodness.
It really wasn't.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Everything we could do wrong, we did.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, we got out of it and kept on trudging along. But happy to talk about that particular deal or any others that we have. I
think it would be fitting start. My first rehab deal that I did was an absolute nightmare. Very similar to kind of the one I hinted at. Just partnered with somebody. They walked out on me halfway through the project. They were the rehabber. I would kind of lined up the deal and the money and was hands off in theory. Then halfway through, they're like, "This is a terrible deal. Like, let's just give the house back." I was like, can't do, like, are you kidding me right now? And then hindsight, 2020, everything that could go wrong felt like it could go wrong. Things were going better. And then I had that similar situation that you did. And I don't know if that's the one you're talking about. And if not, it is. Okay. So I guess what happened to me is we had a bid from a contractor, somebody we'd done. This would have been our 4th house, I think, we'd have done with the same contractor. Got the bid out, got excited, got the process started, and then, I don't know, about 20% into the project, he went MIA.
Yep.
And we got bids out to finish out the project from a bunch of other people, and everybody else on our end was like, oh, this is a teardown. Like, we're not going to even fix it. Like, we don't even want to bid to fix it. And we're actually still sitting on that land now and just don't really know what to do. But
yeah, mine's very similar to my story.
Yeah.
Same contractor, by the way, that we're talking about.
Same one.
Burned us both. Took a huge deposit on the front end and basically didn't do anything.
Yep.
Walked away with it. And every guy we tried to bring back in to finish the job out was 2 to 3 times what we originally bid for. And so we just ended up biting the bullet and getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Could we have done something different now that we know a little bit more? Probably. But at the time, it was just, okay, we learned our lesson, get rid of it, move on, make more money elsewhere.
Yeah, just kind of sacrifice the arm, the finger, the hand, et cetera, to save the rest of the body. Was that your all's first deal working together with that contractor? Because for me, I was like, I don't know what I could have necessarily done too much different because we did have a really positive track record with him.
It was our second, but it was in parallel to our first.
Okay.
So we ended up getting burned on both of them, actually.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Basically ended up swinging the hammer on the first one to get. It was a much smaller project.
So it was a little bit of an easier recovery.
We won on that one, which was great. But it ended up taking us about 3 deals, 3 complete rehabs and flips to get out of that one deal financially.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit, in 2017 we bought 3. In 2018, we bought about 15 properties.
Wow.
And,
That's awesome.
between Cash Hammer and creative financing methods.
Cash Hammer?
Basically straight out cash.
Oh, okay. That's a new term for me.
Yeah.
Very cool. Sounds like really, that's a good one.
In 2019, I think we backed off a little bit, and we've only purchased 8 to 10 this year.
Yeah. Was there any intention with that, or is it just kind of the way things have fallen? Or
things have fallen as far as we still were holding a lot of our properties we purchased in 2018, and we're still dispositioning them, whether it was a flip, a rental, or wholesale or hotel.
Yeah. So let's go back to 2015. You read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Was that the year you read it?
It was.
That was the book that, for same thing, kind of got me hooked. And curious to know, I started asking this question a little bit. Like, I've been married for about a year now, and just over. And when I first started, like, I was kind of just by myself. Could, take a little bit more risk. There wasn't anybody, like, quote unquote, to, like, be worried about or take care of or anything like that. Like, every decision was just very, kind of in a vacuum. That's not the case. And how is that conversation? You're like, hey, like, we've had this thing going. I don't know how long you were at your previous job. And, hey, let's give all this up and pursue this. How did that go? Was it easy? Was it hard? It sounds like you got to a really good team, like, centered decision. But was it easy to get there?
I'd say the initial conversation wasn't positive. It really wasn't. Because, stability and what you're taught all the way through from time at least a lot of us were, was the fact that, hey, you get it, you go to school, you get a good job, and you stay there. And I was working in the industry for about 10 years, all in the same employer, so I had a lot of momentum in that regards, right? I had a good job where I was able to manage others and lead in big company initiatives, which was a great feeling, challenging day in and day out. But after reading the book, it inspired me to, be my own boss, build our own kingdom, right? So, but to your question, the conversation was more evolutional, and it did take about a year from the time I brought it up with my spouse to when she was on board, and then finally 6 months later after that point. So it was a long 18-month process from the time I originally mentioned it to the time it actually happened.
Right.
But we had to prepare financially for it. Yeah. And obviously emotionally, like, what are we getting ourselves into? And at the end of the day, this is what I really thought. Hey, what's the worst that could happen? I come back to corporate America, or I go find another job at the end of the day. What's the worst that can happen? Yeah. So that was the mentality I took about it, and that may have not been right. Others may not have taken that leap of faith, but it was the right thing for me.
Yeah, I think that leap of faith, or what's great about real estate at least, is that it's right for anybody, almost whatever decision, because so much of it is based on your approach and the support team and kind of just comfort level with risk. And so all of those things are variable. So it's like, it's really hard to be objectively right or wrong when you're like, hey, I'm going to go full time. Well, was it the right time or not? Well, yeah. If you feel at peace with it probably was then.
Yeah, and also I felt like I had supported myself well at the time with mentors, and had spent a year and a half learning how to do this without actually doing it, putting our own kind of skin in the game, so to speak. So that kind of allowed us to launch off versus just completely having no concepts before taking that leap.
What was your process for education on that? Because there's a million different options out there. Did you? I think when I met you, I felt like you were already doing things. So I don't even remember where we met. It wasn't through Korea or anything like that. I think it was just.
I think you were actively wholesaling, so I think I got a hold of something.
Just something like that. Okay. So how did you get into the game then? Like, what was the rich dad, poor dad? We were like, okay, I need to do my own thing. And then how did you decide it was real estate and take it from there?
So Rich Dad, Poor Dad had their seminar type things. Jumped on a couple of online things. Never attended the weekend.
Oh, you missed out.
Missed out. But I did end up connecting. I was looking for podcasts at the time. I came across one by Justin Williams at the time. House Flipping Formula, I believe was the name of it. And just got hooked on that one. Started in their initial online platform. Then moved up to their next program, which they called Six Figure Flipping at the time. And now I'm in the seven-figure flipping
Very cool.
Group. And it's just basically a bunch of other investors across the nation that try to mastermind. And they meet in person 2 to 3 times a year.
Very cool.
But support each other, and don't have necessarily any guards up in the way we communicate with each other. So that's basically my learning platform. And I know there's a lot of others, but I didn't want to get so many out there, right?
That is true.
So many different strategies that do work, but if you don't focus on one of them, you'll never get anywhere. So that's why I just kind of put the blinders on and focused on those guys.
That makes sense. When you started doing your first deal, how much were you surprised when you were actually in the meat and bones of it, or did you feel that year and a half of education, like sharpening, the axe per se, like were you well prepared, or how much did you get in there like, oh my goodness, okay, this is totally different than what I was thinking?
The biggest part that was a surprise, I did feel like I had a solid foundation going in. I'd even raised money prior to my first deal kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
So I knew the basic mechanics to do that, which allowed me to have that confidence to go into it, right? The biggest issue was the contractor piece at the end of the day, actually managing the projects from complete. In our minds, it's very simple, right? Hey, easy.
Not in my mind. But I get that.
I love that expression. Simple, but not easy.
Right.
Simple, but not easy.
So you went into it, and it was bumpy roads, but no major surprises per se. Then on your first one.
Obviously, I had to learn how to actually go through with an actual contract. It was, looking back, it's not been almost 3 years now. Yeah. Looking back, it was all kind of like, all right, now it's rubber hitting the road. Yeah. It's time to go. I've already jumped out the plane. It's now time to build the parachute, right?
Right. Hope it opens.
Right. And so, but having those folks around me helped me have that courage. Now, where I should have probably learned a little bit more prior to, or just asked more folks in the midst of it is okay, prior to going and getting even a contractor to do something, what are the safeguards? And yeah, man, that sounds like a lot of work to get all these contracts in place, have all the scopes of works already defined all the way from the beginning to the end. That to me was completely foreign. I couldn't even tell you what a decking board was for a roof. I didn't even know the right terminology to be able to put the scope of work together. So that was the biggest learning for me. I
was just curious to know is once you go through a couple. There's always seems to be stages for everybody, right? Like it always says, like, what work to do deals 1 through 10 isn't the same skill set that's going to get you through deals from 100 to 200 or whatever. Where do you feel like you are now on the staircase? I mean, you started, did the 6-figure, now you're in the 7-figure mastermind group. What are some of the, they don't have to be specific, but if you can conceptually talk about maybe some of the challenges or the problems that you have now versus the ones that you did at, in year one, and if your approach is the same or if the approach is different to work through those.
I think this all comes back to what's your end goal.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, are you building a business or are you building another job for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And from the onset, I was out to build a business, one that didn't need me to actually be in the middle of it to operate. And that is my goal still. And so from the beginning, I had to learn all the roles just because financially I had to do the roles because I couldn't afford to hire someone out, or at least in my mind, I didn't know ways to actually get around that. But the challenges at the beginning was, how do I do this and keep it repeatable and do it at a rate that makes financial sense? Now I understand the mechanics of doing it, but we're building a team, which is why we're here today, is to kind of talk about that team to do that. As far as when you get a hold of a lead, how do you convert the lead? How do you get to the closing table? How do you manage the project once you have it? How do you market a property so that it sells for maximum value? So where we're at right now is I'm training others to do what I have been doing for the last couple of years and trying to just build the machine a little bit more so that I can pump more marketing in, because I've got an acquisitions manager to now go on these sales calls, and I've got a project manager that can manage the incoming projects, but keeping those guys up to speed and connected and focused is really where I'm at right now. How to actually lead a team and be effective at it so that they stay engaged. They're they're rowing in the same direction I am. They're incentivized by the same things that incentivize me. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is just trying to add a little fuel to the fire and build it up.
Yeah, no, that's funny. 2019 for me was like very, I don't know if similar, but that was when I was like, okay, time to like focus on this and build this out, systemize it, and kind of build something a little bit more repeatable and predictable. What was your first hire? You don't have to specific which role, but how was the thought process going into that? Because you kind of alluded to it, right? You're like, I didn't think I could afford them or whatnot. I know first time I hired, I was like, I'm so stressed out, freaking out for months, it seemed like on end. It was not an easy mental process for me. I'm curious to know how that journey was for you.
Well, I had a little experience in my previous role in corporate America, managing some folks from India, actually, and remotely, obviously, and virtually. And so that was natural to me from a standpoint. But also you hear about all these virtual assistants helping you out, and they're low cost and different things. And so my first hire was my virtual assistant. She's been with me since January 2018.
Wow.
And she's a rock star. But the process to do that was just, how are others doing this that are successful?
Right.
And so I read up on it and or talked to others about it, and they just either went through services that provide virtual assistants that have the skill sets already, and or hired direct. And so I went the hired direct route, found a marketplace in the Philippines, hired basically through posting an ad on this marketplace, asked them to do a few things, those that applied, and those that actually went through the process correctly. I then jumped on a Skype call at the time and did an in-person interview. And so based on, just kind of like you, if they were right here, right now, had that interview one-on-one, asked some very basic questions to some more involved questions, ultimately to understand their motivations, how long they would ultimately be willing to work in my organization. Because at the end of the day, turnover is very costly. So I wanted someone that was going to be in it for the long haul, or someone that looked like they would at the time. And so once all was done, and I finally narrowed it down to one candidate, She got the offer. She accepted it. She started 2 weeks later, and we've been working ever since together for the last 2 years almost now.
How long from first hire to second hire and second to third hire did it take? So it was like give or take 3 years from when you started to your first hire, right?
Give or take, it was within the first year of actually doing this.
Right, okay, so you did that, but then 2018, and now it's end of 2019, you've added 2 more team members, so it's been progressively quicker in between team members as far as deciding to make that jump?
First hire was about a year.
Yeah.
The second hire came about 6 months after the first hire.
Okay.
And then the third hire was about 3 months after the second hire.
Yeah.
So it was obviously a quicker process getting the second and third on. And
so is there a fourth coming soon?
Hey, I mean, I would love to bring on more folks.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they're all assets.
Mm-hmm.
They're all going to be pulling their own weight.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to stabilize, obviously, too. It's
Yeah.
more of a momentum thing than it is, anything else. But, yeah, we did have our first project manager was hired in July of last year in 2018. Unfortunately, she had contracted cancer. Yeah, and she left us in March, so I had to rehire, which
Mm-hmm.
we mutually know the guy because you referred him over, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
The current project manager has been in place since April.
You know, in regards to us, we just think about this. You know that there's a deal we did together in Hendersonville there in Laurel Park, and I don't know if you remember the details of it, but you won it over from your project manager at the time, unbeknownst to any of us involved in that, and it kind of got a little like competitive at the end, or not even competitive, but just like came to the last minute. It was like, hey, like this just needs to happen. Made the decision, and then full circle, I heard he's like got sent to the house, and he's like, oh, I know this house. What's happening here? So I found that to be really funny when I kind of heard that story of it coming full circle like that. It's interesting. It's a small world.
It is a small community of us here, and at the end of the day, it was funny that he didn't end up buying the house, but he ended up managing the project.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, he ended up buying another one from you that's working out perfect for him.
Yeah, so I've heard, which is super exciting. On that note, you mentioned earlier that you've got your real estate license as well, right?
That's right.
So what's the thought process around that? Are you actively listing and selling, or is it just a convenience thing? Or because there's a lot of different opinions in the real estate world as if you're an investor, should you have your license or not?
I will say it's definitely a polarizing question, right? Like some are adamant either way, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
At the time, I thought it was more of an educational tool for me. Hey, I did broker 5 deals while I was working full time back in 2016.
Okay, wow.
So that kind of afforded me the knowledge on how the whole buying process works on once you actually get a property to the finish line. What's the experience like? How do we bring in attorneys? What is it like with the appraisers? What are they looking for? Lenders and all those kind of fun things. To answer your question straightforwardly, at this point in time, it is more of a, hey, how can we convert a lead, maximize every lead that we can?
Right.
Now, me having my license doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be the one that takes a listing if we cannot buy a property from a lead. Eventually, I do foresee myself having that as a referral more than an actively listing kind of standpoint. And we have converted leads into listings. And we've got one right now that's under contract that we can convert as a actual investment kind of grade purchase. And so it's just a way of maximizing our leads.
Very cool. So is that a positive outlook that you have on it then? Would you do it again?
My advice is everyone should go through real estate school, but should not get their license. That's my current stance.
That's it. Which may or may not change, obviously.
It may change.
Yeah.
Here's where the fine line is. You are held to a higher standard as a broker from a disclosure standpoint. Some brokers believe that you should disclose everything about a property. Others are, in my opinion, are more right about material facts. And material facts is kind of a vague wide open. What's going to influence you to buy a property, or what's going to influence an appraiser of adjusting a price based on one item versus another is very subjective.
Yeah.
And it opens up a can of worms. And I will say that I've gotten kind of beat up being a licensed broker listing my own flips quite a bit from other brokers saying and threatening, honestly, threatening that I didn't disclose certain things, and they're going to turn me into the real estate commission, as an example.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's not going to prevent me from investing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've worked really hard to have this license and have this momentum to have the in-house listing, so reduce our cost of listing and buying properties.
So are you still listing your own deals then?
My project manager I had first last year ended up taking over most of the listings I had, but once she left us, I took them back over. So at this point, yes, I am listing our own.
How's that going?
It's going.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing a market change, in my opinion, a softening over the last year. Buyers are having a lot more say right now than they were in the past on what they're going to buy and not buy. But as far as the mechanics of it, it's not too bad. And after I've learned the ropes a little bit, initially there was a lot of, hey, how do I even get it on the MLS? Basic stuff. How do I field calls? Do I need to be available 24/7 whenever all these buyers or potentially sellers are asking me questions? So balancing that's been the hardest part.
So now that you know what you know about building teams and going through that process, what's your hindsight 2020? What are your takeaways from what you've learned this year? And let's keep it on this year. We'll go back 10 months or whatever the case is, and just do the most recent lessons that stand out to you.
Due diligence sticks out right out of the gate. Not doing enough of it is what's hurt us in the past.
People, properties?
Both. I was initially talking about properties, but when you hire someone, you are taking on the good, the bad,
everything,
the ugly,
about
right?
Them,
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they are who they are. They may not be motivated by the same things you are. They may not feel the same way, the core values that you have. So being very diligent on the front end of on the hiring process to know what your core values are, as an example.
Yeah.
What do you value and why, and making sure your team members value those same things. Otherwise, it doesn't have to be everyone that be on the same track every step of the way, but if they don't have your core values, then you're going to have friction right out of the gate. So that's one of the takeaways I've learned over the last year is hiring with your core values. And people wonder, well, how do I know what my core values are? And one of the easiest ways you can figure out is, hey, identify 3 individuals that you admire, and then write down 5 items why you admire that particular individual for each person, and then see what overlaps between those 3 individuals. And generally speaking, you'll see a correlation between those 3 as to how you determine what your own core values are. And then going forward, since you know what you value most, that's what you're looking for. And you may not ask them, hey, you don't give them a list and say, are these your core values as well?
On a scale of 1 to 10, yeah.
You ask questions in the interviewing process
that lead to that.
That tell you very straightforwardly where they sit on those items.
So we've just been working on our core values over here on our end, on this side of the table, and it's been interesting. That was a really cool exercise. We might have to revisit it just because I think that would be it'd be really telling on our end. Do you mind sharing what your core values are and maybe how long you've had them in place and if they've evolved over time?
So I finally went through that exercise about a year ago as far as, okay, what are we as Carolina real estate pros about? And I can tell you that we're about accountability at the end of the day. Doing what you say you're going to do, having that integrity, accountability, integrity. Empathy was ended up being one of our actual core values. Seeing things from another person's perspective. And then I believed in, education also as continuous learning. People have a drive not to be closed-minded about things, but have an open mind to learn more every day. So those were kind of the 4 core values that we end up coming up with.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I want to give you the stage. Just kind of when I reached out to you, it was talking about team building, and I don't know if maybe there's something I should have asked that I haven't asked, but just wanted to give you an opportunity to be like, hey, like these is what I found to be true, or any tidbits or suggestions that you think are worth sharing.
So if we stay in the lane of building a team,
let's stay in that lane for the moment.
Always be hiring is a good motto to have. That doesn't mean just go hire a bunch of people, but have an open door policy that when you identify talent,
you bring them in.
You open the door to them, and you make a position if you have to, because at the end of the day, people are assets, not liabilities.
Right.
And as long as they've got a good head on their shoulders and they align with your core values and have a good work ethic, obviously, they're going to probably help you build your business.
Always be hiring. That's a good one.
Always be hiring.
Yeah. Anything else?
So regarding the hiring process, there's a lot of different ways you can structure things. Not everyone has to be a true W-2, right? We've had this, a lot of folks that are in this business work with a lot of 1099 contractors and are just people that you work with, right? That you pay. You can structure things in a 1099 way and reduce that overhead that you might have. So as an example, my first project manager was a 1099 hire, but my second one was a W-2. And the reasoning for one versus the other is legal reasons more than anything. I was treating my 1099 like a W-2, and at the end of the day, I wanted to have that say on what they are focused on and what they're doing versus here's a project, here's the scope of work, manage it to the end, and how you want to do it, that's cool. That's not how I am wired, so I want more control over that. But there are others, like my acquisitions manager, who is still a 1099 and 100% commission-based at this point. So that aligns well with his motivation to take leads down and convert them into deals. Yeah, exactly. And it keeps my overhead down. So we can technically have many acquisition managers as long as they're producing, and then we're paying for the leads to actually give them. So structuring your folks is important. You don't want to get in trouble with the IRS.
Right.
Technically, when you try to make everyone a 1099, you're walking a fine line.
Can be a little questionable.
Because are you trying to evade paying taxes? Social Security, workers' comp type stuff, insurances, which obviously are overhead, but there's pluses and minuses to both. Taxes obviously are the biggest reason to have one versus the other. So as far as the virtual assistant, man, I'm almost evangelical about everyone should have a virtual assistant. In my case, it's Marlette. Everyone should have a Marlette.
Yeah. We have one, and I think it's been about a year now with this one. Before the virtual team member that we have now, we had one before, and again, I was like, I remember when I first made that first one, I was like, this is incredible. I can't imagine I can't ever go back at this point.
No, I mean, I guess going back to the real reason why she was my first hire, hey, you're talking about different scales of economy here. As an example, in the Philippines, an average wage is $1 US per day. That's the average.
I did not know that.
Wage in the Philippines. So if you can offer $2-3 and I'm sorry, I misspoke. No, $1 an hour.
Right. Yeah.
That's way more. Sorry about that. Yeah. So $1 an hour is the average in the Philippines. But if you can offer $2 to $3 an hour, you're way beyond what the market is paying over there.
Right.
And you're also, hey, you're not having to pay someone $10 or $15 an hour here to do the same type of work. Plus, in the Philippines specifically, they were a U.S. controlled territory until the 40s.
Right.
So they have a very big American influence in their culture, which is can't be said about a lot of the other countries that you may have a...
Makes for good alignment overall.
Very good alignment.
Helps, yeah.
They're right now exactly 12 hours ahead of us. We just hired someone that was willing to work our daytime.
Nice.
And there's reasons for both, to have them work during our nighttime for maybe coverage purposes or getting things done while you're sleeping. But we wanted someone that we wanted to be able to talk to right now if we needed to.
Yeah, we have this similar setup, so it makes me feel good about that. So it's good. It's good validation. Well, as we're wrapping things up, I'm going to put you on the spot really quickly.
Yeah.
We're near the end of 2019, so I've been asking, what's happening in 2020 in your opinion? You obviously have a unique perspective as being an agent and also an investor. So if you were to give a prediction, which with a ton of time to prepare, 5 seconds, what would it be and what do you think is going to happen, if anything?
The crystal ball says it's going to be right about the same as it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're going into an election year, which it drives behavior a lot of times in one way or another. But at the end of the day, the economy is still very healthy. We hear from a lot of people that the sky is falling a little bit. We're waiting for this huge correction, but we're in different economic times than we were 10 years ago. And quite honestly, I just expect it to be about the same as it is right now.
Same as where we're at right now.
Yeah, up and down. I think we're bouncing right now a little bit, right?
Doing that wave game.
Yep, it's going up and down.
Very cool. Well, Alan, man, appreciate you taking the time to come on. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to refer to you guys as anything but creep. Just Halloween podcast, etc. But I'll do my best. So CREP, right?
So CREP. C-Rep.
C-Rep, that's right.
C-Rep.
So if somebody wants to connect with you more, what's the best way for them to do that? Where do they find you?
You can find us on CarolinaRealEstatePros.com. We're on social media as well, Carolina Real Estate Pros. And they can email us, info@CarolinaRealEstatePros.com.
Cool. Awesome, Alan. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, you guys. As always, if you've been listening lately, I putting out a big request, bottom of our hearts. Nolan and I would love to hear from you guys. Leave us a rating, review. Let us know how we're doing. It just helps get the word out and just gives us some feedback on what you guys think and if any changes we should make. So take care, y'all. See you guys next Tuesday.